Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the course of your life? A single word that shifted everything? That's exactly what happened to Alex Morgan on that fateful summer day. Before I tell you this incredible story that might just restore your faith in timing and destiny, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us how unpredictable life can be. Alex Morgan had been working at Horizon Technologies for just over 8 months. At 26, he was the youngest member of the marketing team, still trying to find his footing in the corporate world. His boss, Claire Winters, was something of an enigma to everyone in the office. At 34, she had already climbed to the position of marketing director, known for her brilliant strategies and no-nonsense approach to business. In meetings, she was focused, direct, and occasionally intimidating. Alex had presented to her exactly 4 times, and each time, he'd left feeling like he'd barely survived an interrogation. Claire wasn't unkind, just intensely professional. She kept a clear boundary between herself and her employees. No personal stories, no casual Friday drinks, no sharing of weekend plans. The team respected her, admired her work ethic, but nobody really knew her. Some of the office gossip speculated about her life outside work, creating elaborate stories about why someone so successful and, yes, beautiful, seemed to keep everyone at arm's length. Alex hadn't given much thought to Claire beyond the professional respect she commanded. His focus had been on proving himself, on learning everything he could about marketing strategy and digital campaigns. He was determined to make a name for himself at Horizon, even if it meant working weekends and late nights. Which is exactly what he'd been doing for the past 3 months, leading up to the summer break. The company had a mandatory 2-week shutdown in July, something about cost savings and encouraging employees to actually use their vacation time. Alex had initially planned to use the time to work on some side projects, maybe update his portfolio. But his roommate Jake had other ideas. "You need to get out of the city, man," Jake had insisted, waving a brochure for a beachside town called Sandpiper Bay, about 3 hours down the coast. 2 weeks of sun, sand, and absolutely no thinking about work. Alex had resisted at first, but eventually gave in. Maybe a change of scenery would do him good. They rented a modest beach house with a couple of other friends, packed their bags, and headed out on the first Saturday of the company break. Sandpiper Bay was exactly what the brochure had promised, a picturesque coastal town with golden beaches, clear blue water, and a relaxed atmosphere that seemed to immediately melt away the stress of city life. For the first few days, Alex found himself actually unwinding. He slept in, spent hours swimming and reading on the beach, and enjoyed long dinners with his friends at the local seafood restaurants. It was on the 4th day that it happened. Alex had woken up early, unable to shake his habitual morning schedule. Rather than lying in bed, he decided to take advantage of the quiet morning hours and go for a run along the beach. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow across the water. The beach was nearly empty, save for a few dedicated morning joggers and someone doing yoga near the water's edge. Alex had been running for about 20 minutes when he spotted a woman walking along the shoreline, occasionally stopping to pick up shells. There was something familiar about her, but he couldn't quite place it. As he got closer, he realized with a jolt of surprise that it was Claire Winters, his boss. She looked completely different from the office Claire he knew. Her usually perfectly styled dark hair was loose around her shoulders, slightly tousled by the sea breeze. Instead of her tailored business attire, she wore simple white shorts and a loose blue top. She was barefoot, carrying her sandals in one hand. Alex's first instinct was to turn around and run in the opposite direction. The last thing he wanted was an awkward encounter with his boss during vacation. But before he could change course, she looked up and their eyes met. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by what seemed like the same momentary panic he was feeling. It was too late to pretend he hadn't seen her. Alex slowed his pace, raising a hand in an awkward wave as he approached. "Ms. Winters," he said, immediately cringing at how formal it sounded in this setting. "Alex," she replied, and there was a note of surprise in her voice. "I didn't expect to see anyone from the office here." "Me neither," he admitted. "My friends and I rented a place for the break." "Are you staying nearby?" Claire nodded, gesturing vaguely down the beach. "I have a small cottage about a mile that way. I come here every summer." There was an awkward pause. Alex shifted from one foot to the other, unsure of what to say next. This was uncharted territory, seeing his boss in such a casual setting, having a conversation that wasn't about marketing strategies or project deadlines. "Well," he finally said, "I should probably continue my run." "Enjoy your morning, Ms. Winters." He was about to jog away when she said, "Claire." Alex stopped, turning back to her with a questioning look. "We're not in the office," she explained with a small smile. "You can call me Claire." It was such a simple thing, just her name. But something about the way she said it, the slight softening of her expression, the morning light catching in her eyes, something shifted in that moment. Alex felt a strange flutter in his chest, a sudden awareness of Claire not as his intimidating boss, but as a person standing barefoot on the beach with shells in her hand and the sunrise behind her. "Claire," he repeated, and her name felt different on his tongue. "Enjoy your shell hunting, Claire." She laughed then, a genuine, unguarded sound that Alex had never heard in the office. "Thanks, Alex. Enjoy your run." He continued his jog, but his mind was no longer clear and focused on the rhythm of his feet against the sand. Instead, it was filled with the image of Claire's smile, the sound of her laugh, and the way she had looked standing there in the early morning light. By the time he returned to the beach house, his friends were just waking up, planning their day over coffee. Alex joined them, but he felt distracted, his thoughts repeatedly drifting back to that brief encounter. "Earth to Alex," Jake said, waving a hand in front of his face. "Where'd you go, man? I asked if you wanted to check out that surfing lesson this afternoon." "Sorry," Alex said, shaking his head. "Yeah, surfing sounds good." But throughout the day, as they attempted to master the waves, with varying degrees of success, Alex found himself scanning the beach, wondering if he might catch another glimpse of Claire. He told himself it was just curiosity. After all, seeing your boss in such a different context was bound to be intriguing. But deep down, he knew it was something more. The next morning, Alex found himself waking early again, lacing up his running shoes with more care than usual. He told himself he wasn't specifically hoping to run into Claire again, he was just enjoying the peaceful morning beach. But as he reached the spot where they had met the previous day, his pace slowed, and he found himself looking more carefully at the few early morning beachgoers. She wasn't there. Alex felt a twinge of disappointment as he continued his run, pushing himself harder as if to outpace the feeling. He was being ridiculous. Claire was his boss, his intimidating, professional, brilliant boss who happened to look beautiful in the morning light. That was all. He was on his way back, about a mile from the beach house, when he spotted her. She wasn't collecting shells this time, but sitting on a large piece of driftwood, a sketchbook open on her lap. She was so absorbed in her drawing that she didn't notice him approaching until he was quite close. "Good morning," he said, slowing to a stop. Claire looked up, surprise giving way to recognition, and then to a small smile. "Morning, Alex. Another early run?" "It's the best time," he replied, gesturing to the nearly empty beach and the soft morning light. "I didn't know you were an artist." Claire glanced down at her sketchbook, a hint of color touching her cheeks. "I wouldn't call myself an artist. It's just something I do to relax." "May I?" Alex asked, gesturing to the sketchbook. After a moment's hesitation, Claire nodded, shifting slightly to make room for him on the driftwood. Alex sat down, careful to maintain a respectful distance, and looked at the drawing she had been working on. It was a detailed sketch of the coastline, capturing the way the morning light played on the water and the gentle curve of the bay. It was surprisingly good, not just a casual hobby sketch, but the work of someone with genuine talent. "This is beautiful," he said honestly. "You've really captured the light." "Thank you," Claire replied, and there was a note of genuine pleasure in her voice. "It's easier here, somehow. The city never has this quality of light." "How long have you been coming here?" Alex asked, genuinely curious about this side of his boss he'd never seen before. "Since I was a child," Claire said, her eyes on the horizon. "My grandparents had a small house here. After they passed, I couldn't bear to sell it, so I kept it. It's nothing fancy, but it's home, in a way my apartment in the city never feels." Alex nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "It's a special place," he agreed. "I've only been here a few days, but there's something about it that gets under your skin." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the waves roll in. It wasn't the awkward silence of their first encounter, but something more comfortable, more natural. "What about you?" Claire finally asked. "What brought you to Sandpiper Bay?" Alex explained about Jake's insistence on a proper vacation, their rented beach house, and the group of friends he was staying with. As he talked, he realized this was the longest non-work conversation he'd ever had with Claire. In the office, their interactions were always focused, efficient, and strictly professional. Here, with the sound of waves in the background and no meetings to rush to, conversation flowed more easily. "Well," Claire said eventually, closing her sketchbook, "should probably head back. I promised myself I'd finish reading that novel today." "Of course," Alex said, standing up. "It was nice talking to you, Claire." She smiled at his slight hesitation before using her first name. "You too, Alex. Enjoy the rest of your run." As she walked away, Alex found himself watching her go, struck by how different she seemed here, more relaxed, more open, more human. The Claire Winters of the office seemed like a completely different person from the woman who collected shells and drew beautiful sketches of the coastline. Back at the beach house, Alex's friends were planning a bonfire for that evening. They'd invited some people they'd met at the local bar, and the day was spent gathering wood, buying supplies, and setting up for what promised to be a fun night. Alex participated in all the preparations, but part of his mind remained occupied with thoughts of Claire, wondering what she was reading, if she was enjoying the same perfect weather, if she ever attended beach bonfires or if she preferred the solitude of her cottage. The bonfire that night was everything a beach party should be: good music, cold drinks, new friends, and conversations that flowed as easily as the waves lapping at the shore. Alex found himself talking to a friendly local named Mia, who worked at the town's only bookstore and knew all the best hidden spots in Sandpiper Bay. "You should check out Pelican Cove," she was saying, describing a secluded beach accessible only by a hidden trail. "It's about a 30-minute hike, but totally worth it. The water is crystal clear, and you'll probably have the whole place to yourself, especially if you go early." Alex was about to ask for more specific directions when he spotted a familiar figure walking along the edge of their bonfire's light. Claire was some distance away, clearly on an evening walk rather than approaching their gathering. Without really thinking about it, Alex excused himself from Mia and walked toward Claire. "Hey," he called out when he was close enough to be heard over the music and chatter of the bonfire. Claire turned, surprise evident on her face as she recognized him. "Alex. Having a good night?" "Yeah, just a small get-together," he said, gesturing back toward the bonfire. "Would you like to join us? There's plenty of food and drinks." The invitation surprised him as much as it seemed to surprise her. In the office, he would never have dreamed of inviting Claire Winters to a social gathering. But here, in this place where she collected shells and drew sketches, it felt natural. Claire hesitated, glancing toward the lively group around the fire. "I don't want to intrude on your vacation with your friends." "You wouldn't be," Alex assured her. "Everyone's really friendly, and half the people there are locals we just met anyway." Claire seemed to consider it for a moment, then shook her head with a small smile. "Thank you for the invitation, but I think I'll continue my walk." Enjoy your evening, Alex." As she turned to go, Alex felt a strange impulse to stop her, to say something that would make her stay. But he just nodded and said, "Good night, Claire." He watched her walk away, her figure gradually disappearing into the darkness of the beach. When he returned to the bonfire, Mia gave him a curious look. "Friend of yours?" she asked. "Sort of," Alex replied, not sure how to explain. "She's actually my boss, back in the city. I didn't know she'd be here too." "Small world," Mia commented. "She comes here every summer, stays in that old blue cottage down by the point. Keeps to herself mostly, but she's nice. Buys a lot of books from our shop." Alex found himself wanting to ask more about Claire, but stopped himself. It felt strange to be discussing his boss with a stranger, even in this casual setting. Instead, he steered the conversation back to Pelican Cove and other local attractions. Later that night, lying in bed with the windows open to let in the sea breeze, Alex found himself thinking about Claire again. There was something about seeing her in this different context that had shifted his perception of her completely. The intimidating boss had been replaced by a woman who collected shells, drew beautiful sketches, and walked alone on the beach at night. A woman whose laugh had caught him completely off guard, whose smile had created a strange flutter in his chest. The next morning, Alex woke even earlier than usual. The house was quiet, his friend still sleeping off the effects of the bonfire. He slipped out quietly, but instead of going for his usual run, he decided to take Mia's advice and find Pelican Cove. Following her directions, he located the hidden trail that wound through coastal scrub and over a small headland. The morning was perfect, cool but not cold, with the promise of another beautiful day ahead. The trail was more challenging than he'd expected, with some steep sections and rocky terrain, but after about 25 minutes of hiking, he emerged onto exactly the kind of secluded paradise Mia had described. Pelican Cove was a small, perfectly formed bay with white sand and crystal-clear water protected by rocky outcrops on either side. And it was empty, or so he thought until he spotted a familiar figure sitting on a rock at the far end of the beach, gazing out at the water. Claire. For a moment, Alex considered turning back. This was getting ridiculous. Was he subconsciously following her? But before he could retreat, Claire turned and saw him. Even from a distance, he could see her surprise. Taking a deep breath, Alex walked across the sand toward her. "We have to stop meeting like this," he said with a smile when he reached her. Claire laughed, that same unguarded sound he'd heard on their first encounter. "Are you stalking me, Alex Morgan?" "I could ask you the same thing," he replied, relieved that she seemed amused rather than annoyed. "A local recommended this place. Said it would be deserted." "It usually is," Claire said, gesturing to the empty beach around them. "That's why I come here. It's my favorite spot in Sandpiper Bay." "I can see why," Alex said, taking in the pristine beauty of the cove. "It's incredible." "Were you planning to swim?" Claire asked. Alex nodded. "That was the idea. The water looks perfect." "It is," Claire confirmed. "I already had my morning swim. The water's a bit cold at first, but you get used to it quickly." Alex glanced at her, noticing for the first time that her hair was damp, and she wore a simple cover-up over what he assumed was a swimsuit. The realization made him suddenly self-conscious of his own swim shorts and t-shirt. "Well," he said, "I should probably take advantage of having the place to myself." "Don't let me stop you," Claire replied with a small smile. "I was just about to head back anyway." But she made no move to leave as Alex pulled his t-shirt over his head and walked toward the water. The first touch of the ocean on his feet confirmed Claire's warning. It was cold, but refreshingly so after the hike. He waded in deeper, then dove under an incoming wave. The cool water enveloped Alex completely, washing away the heat from his hike. When he surfaced, he half expected Claire to be gone, but she remained on her rock, watching him with a thoughtful expression. He swam for about 20 minutes, enjoying the pristine water and occasionally glancing back to shore to see if Claire was still there. Each time, she was. When he finally emerged from the water, droplets cascading off his shoulders, Claire offered him a small towel from her beach bag. "Here," she said. "I always bring an extra." "Thanks," Alex said, surprised by the gesture. He dried his face and hair, then handed it back. "The water's perfect once you get used to it." "I told you," Claire replied with a smile. There was a moment of silence between them, filled only by the gentle sound of waves lapping at the shore. "I should probably head back," Alex finally said, though he felt strangely reluctant to leave. "Actually," Claire said, hesitating slightly, "I was thinking of getting breakfast at the Lighthouse Cafe in town. They make incredible blueberry pancakes. Would you like to join me?" The invitation caught Alex completely off guard. This was Claire Winters, his boss, the woman who struck fear into the hearts of marketing executives twice her age, asking him to have breakfast with her. "I'd like that," he heard himself saying before he could overthink it. They hiked back along the trail together, conversation flowing more easily than Alex would have expected. Claire pointed out native plants and birds along the way, revealing a knowledge of the local ecosystem that spoke of years spent exploring these trails. The Lighthouse Cafe was a charming place with weathered wooden tables and large windows overlooking the harbor. As they settled into a corner table, Alex couldn't help but feel the strangeness of the situation. 8 days ago, he had been nervously presenting marketing data to Claire in a sterile conference room. Now they were having breakfast together in a seaside cafe, both of them with salt-dried hair and sand still clinging to their feet. "So," Claire said after they'd ordered, blueberry pancakes for her, eggs Benedict for him, "how are you finding Horizon Technologies so far?" "It's been 8 months?" "Almost 9, Alex corrected, surprised she knew how long he'd been with the company. "And I'm enjoying it. Learning a lot." "You're doing good work," Claire said matter-of-factly. "Your campaign ideas for the Nexus project were innovative. I was impressed." Alex felt a flush of pleasure at the unexpected praise. "Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you." Claire raised an eyebrow. "From me specifically?" "Well, yes," Alex admitted. "Everyone knows you have the highest standards in the company. Getting your approval on a project is like, I don't know, winning an Olympic gold medal or something." Claire laughed, but there was a hint of something else in her expression, surprise, perhaps, or even a touch of sadness. "Is that how the team sees me? As some kind of impossible-to-please taskmaster?" "No, not at all," Alex backpedaled, realizing how his words might have sounded. "Everyone respects you enormously. It's just, you're very professional. Focused. It makes people want to bring their A-game." Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they began to eat, Claire seemed to be considering his words. "I suppose I am rather reserved at work," she finally said. "It's a habit I developed early in my career. As a young woman in a male-dominated industry, I found that maintaining strict professional boundaries was the easiest way to be taken seriously." Alex nodded, understanding dawning. "That makes sense. It can't have been easy." "It wasn't," Claire agreed. "But it worked. Perhaps too well." She smiled ruefully. "Now I'm the intimidating boss who makes people nervous during presentations." "Only a little nervous," Alex said with a grin, and was rewarded with another of Claire's genuine laughs. The conversation shifted then, moving away from work to more personal topics. Alex learned that Claire had studied art before switching to business, that she had a younger brother who lived abroad, that she played the piano and loved old black and white films. In turn, he told her about his passion for photography, his dream of one day starting his own creative agency, his close relationship with his parents who still lived in the small town where he grew up. By the time they finished breakfast, nearly 2 hours had passed, and Alex was surprised by how quickly the time had gone. There had been no awkward silences, no moments of remembering their usual boss-employee dynamic. It had just been easy. As they left the cafe, stepping into the now busy main street of Sandpiper Bay, reality seemed to reassert itself slightly. Claire glanced at her watch. "I should get going," she said. "I have some calls to make this afternoon." "Of course," Alex replied, suddenly unsure of how to end their unexpected morning together. "Thanks for breakfast. And for sharing your secret beach." Claire smiled. It was nice having company for a change. She hesitated, then added, "I usually go to Pelican Cove early mornings, if you wanted to swim there again." Was she suggesting they meet again? Alex felt a flutter of something in his chest, anticipation, perhaps, or something deeper that he wasn't ready to name. "I might take you up on that," he said carefully. The water was perfect. "Well, enjoy the rest of your day, Alex," Claire said, taking a step back. "You too, Claire." As he watched her walk away, Alex realized with startling clarity that he was looking forward to tomorrow morning more than he'd looked forward to anything in a long time. When Alex returned to the beach house, his friends were lounging on the deck, planning their day. "Where have you been, early bird?" Jake asked. "We were about to send out a search party." "Just exploring," Alex replied vaguely. "Found a great little cove for swimming." He didn't mention Claire. Somehow, their morning together felt private, something he wanted to keep to himself for now. The rest of the day passed pleasantly enough: beach volleyball, a trip to the local brewery, dinner at a seafood shack on the pier, but Alex found his thoughts repeatedly drifting to Claire, to their conversation, to the possibility of seeing her again tomorrow. That night, he set his alarm even earlier than usual. The next morning dawned clear and beautiful. Alex slipped out of the house while his friends were still sleeping and made his way to the hidden trail. His heart was beating a little faster than normal, and he told himself it was just from the anticipation of another swim in that perfect cove. When he emerged onto the beach, he saw her immediately, sitting on the same rock as yesterday, but this time with a thermos beside her. She waved when she spotted him, and Alex felt a ridiculous surge of happiness at the simple gesture. "Good morning," he called as he approached. "Morning," Claire replied. "I brought coffee, if you'd like some." "That sounds amazing," Alex said gratefully. She poured the steaming liquid into the thermos cap and handed it to him. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and Alex felt a small jolt at the contact. "Sleep well?" Claire asked as he took a sip of the coffee, strong and black, exactly how he liked it. "Like a rock," Alex replied. "Something about the sea air, I think." They fell into easy conversation, picking up almost where they'd left off the day before. After finishing their coffee, they both swam in the crystal-clear water, occasionally racing to a distant rock and back, laughing and splashing like children. Alex couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so carefree, so present in the moment. Afterward, they sat side by side on Claire's rock, letting the morning sun dry their skin. Alex was acutely aware of her presence beside him, the scent of salt water and something floral, the way droplets of water caught the light on her shoulders, the sound of her breathing gradually slowing after their swim. "I've been coming to this beach for 20 years, Claire said suddenly, "and I've never shared it with anyone before." Alex turned to look at her, surprised by the admission. "Never?" Claire shook her head. "It's always been my private retreat. My place to just be myself, I suppose." "Thank you for sharing it with me," Alex said quietly, understanding the significance of what she was telling him. Claire met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the blue of the ocean. "It feels right, somehow." There was a weight to her words that made Alex's heart beat faster. They were treading into dangerous territory now, crossing a line that existed for good reason. Claire was his boss. In a week, they would return to the office, to their professional roles and responsibilities. Whatever was happening between them here, in this secluded paradise, couldn't, shouldn't, continue beyond Sandpiper Bay. And yet, As they sat together on that sun-warmed rock, the rest of the world seemed very far away. The pattern continued for the next 3 days. Each morning, Alex would slip out early and meet Claire at Pelican Cove. They would swim, talk, sometimes just sit in comfortable silence watching the waves. One morning, Claire brought her sketchbook and drew while Alex swam. Another day, they explored tide pools together, Claire pointing out tiny sea creatures with the enthusiasm of a marine biologist. They never discussed what would happen when their vacation ended, when they returned to being marketing director and junior marketing associate. It hung between them, unacknowledged but ever-present, like a storm cloud on a distant horizon. On the 5th morning of their secret meetings, Alex arrived at Pelican Cove to find it empty. He waited for nearly an hour, swimming alone in the perfect water that somehow felt colder without Claire's presence, before finally accepting that she wasn't coming. Disappointment settled heavy in his chest as he made the hike back to town. Had she regretted their time together? Had she come to her senses about the inappropriateness of their growing friendship? Or had something simply come up, a call she couldn't miss, a commitment she'd forgotten to mention? Alex spent the day with his friends, trying to focus on their plans for a deep-sea fishing trip, but his mind kept returning to Claire's absence. By evening, he found himself walking along the main beach, unconsciously heading in the direction of the blue cottage Mia had mentioned. He spotted Claire sitting alone on the sand near the water's edge, watching the sunset. For a moment, he considered turning back. This was different from their chance encounters or arranged meetings at Pelican Cove. This was him seeking her out, deliberately crossing a boundary. But before he could decide, Claire turned and saw him. After a moment's hesitation, she raised her hand in a small wave. Taking it as an invitation, Alex walked over and sat down beside her on the sand. "I missed you this morning," he said simply. Claire was quiet for a long moment, her eyes on the horizon where the sun was sinking into the sea in a blaze of orange and pink. "I thought it might be better if we didn't meet again," she finally said. "Oh," Alex said, the single syllable inadequate to express his disappointment. "I see. Do you?" Claire turned to look at him directly. "Alex, I'm your boss. In 3 days, we'll be back in the office, and this, whatever this is, can't continue there." "I know that," Alex said. "But we're not in the office now. We're here, in Sandpiper Bay, where you collect shells and draw beautiful sketches and swim in secret coves." "That doesn't change the reality of our situation," Claire replied, but there was a softness in her voice that belied the firmness of her words. "No, it doesn't," Alex agreed. "But it does change how I see you. How I understand you." He took a deep breath. "The Claire I've gotten to know here is someone I care about. Someone I want to keep knowing, even after we go back." Claire's expression was unreadable in the fading light. "It's complicated, Alex." "I know," he said again. "But what if we just enjoy the time we have left here? Deal with the complications when we get back to the city?" Claire was quiet for so long that Alex thought she might not answer. Finally, she sighed. "I missed you this morning too," she admitted softly. The simple confession made Alex's heart leap. They sat together in silence as the last rays of sunlight disappeared and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "There's a local art festival tomorrow evening," Claire said eventually. "Live music, food stalls, local artists selling their work. I go every year. Would you like to come with me?" "I'd love to," Alex replied, trying not to sound too eager. "It's not a date," Claire clarified quickly. "Just 2 people enjoying a local event together." "Of course," Alex agreed, though the distinction felt meaningless given the way his pulse quickened at her invitation. They arranged to meet at the town square the following evening. As they parted ways, Alex resisted the urge to reach for her hand, to prolong their time together. Instead, he simply said, "Good night, Claire," and walked back toward his beach house, feeling lighter than he had all day. The art festival was everything a small-town celebration should be, charming, slightly chaotic, and filled with a genuine sense of community. Local artists had set up booths displaying paintings, pottery, jewelry, and crafts. Food vendors offered everything from fresh seafood to homemade ice cream. A small stage hosted local musicians, their music creating a festive backdrop to the evening. Claire was waiting for him by the central fountain, wearing a simple sundress that made her look younger, more carefree than the office Claire he was used to. Alex felt a flutter of nerves as he approached her, suddenly aware that this felt very much like a date, despite Claire's insistence to the contrary. "You look beautiful," he said before he could stop himself. A hint of color touched Claire's cheeks. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." They wandered through the festival together, stopping to admire artwork, sampling local delicacies, and listening to the music. Claire seemed to know many of the artists, introducing Alex as a friend visiting Sandpiper Bay. Each time she said it, Alex felt a small thrill at being considered her friend, even as another part of him wondered if that word was adequate for what he was beginning to feel. As the evening progressed, they gradually relaxed into each other's company, laughing more freely, standing closer together as they examined paintings or watched performances. At one point, during a particularly lively song, Claire impulsively grabbed his hand and pulled him into a group of people dancing in front of the stage. "I don't really dance," Alex protested, feeling self-conscious. "Neither do I," Claire laughed, "at least not well. But tonight, I don't care." And so they danced, awkwardly at first, then with increasing abandon as they let themselves be carried away by the music and the festive atmosphere. Alex couldn't remember ever seeing Claire so uninhibited, so completely herself. It was intoxicating. Later, as they walked along the beach path back toward Claire's cottage, a comfortable silence fell between them. The night was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze, the moon casting a silver path across the water. "Thank you for coming with me tonight," Claire said as they neared her cottage. "I've always gone to the festival alone before. It was nice to share it with someone." "Thank you for inviting me," Alex replied. "It was the best night I've had in, well, maybe ever." They stopped at the small gate that led to Claire's cottage. This was where they would part ways, where Alex should say goodnight and walk back to his beach house. But neither of them moved. "Alex," Claire began, her voice soft in the darkness, "I don't know what's happening between us, but I know it can't continue once we leave here. You understand that, right?" "I understand that's what you think," Alex replied carefully. "But I'm not sure I agree." Claire sighed. "It's not about what I think. It's about professional boundaries, about the fact that I'm your direct supervisor, about company policies that exist for good reason." "I know all that," Alex said. "But I also know that what I feel when I'm with you isn't something I can just switch off when we go back to the city." Claire was quiet for a moment, her expression hidden in the shadows. "What exactly do you feel, Alex?" It was a dangerous question, one that demanded honesty he wasn't sure he was ready to give. But standing there in the moonlight, with the sound of waves in the background and the memory of their dance still fresh, Alex found he couldn't be anything but truthful. "I feel like I've discovered a whole person behind the professional facade," he said slowly. "Someone creative and passionate and surprisingly funny. Someone who collects shells and draws beautiful sketches and dances without caring who's watching. Someone I think about constantly, someone I want to know better, someone I—" He hesitated, then finished simply, "someone I care about. A lot." Claire took a step closer to him, close enough that he could see the conflict in her eyes. "Alex, Whatever she was about to say was interrupted by the sound of Alex's phone ringing loudly in his pocket. He pulled it out, intending to silence it, but saw Jake's name on the screen. "Sorry," he said to Claire. "It's my roommate. I should probably—" "Of course," Claire said, taking a step back. "You—" "Of course," Claire said, taking a step back. "You should answer it." Alex reluctantly accepted the call. "Hey, Jake, what's up?" "Dude, Where are you? Jake's voice was loud enough that Claire could probably hear it. We've been looking everywhere. The bonfire's already started, and everyone's asking about you. Alex had completely forgotten about the farewell bonfire his friends had planned for their last night in Sandpiper Bay. Sorry, I got caught up with something. I'll be there soon. He hung up and turned back to Claire with an apologetic expression. My friends are having a bonfire tonight. Our last night here. I completely forgot. You should go, Claire said, her voice gentle but distant, as if she was already retreating behind the professional walls he'd glimpsed beyond these past days. Come with me, Alex said impulsively. Meet my friends. Have one last perfect Sandpiper Bay night before we go back to reality. Claire hesitated, and for a moment Alex thought she might agree. But then she shook her head. I don't think that's a good idea. It would make things more complicated. More complicated than they already are? Alex asked with a small smile. Yes, Claire replied simply. Good night, Alex. I'll see you at Pelican Cove tomorrow morning. It was a peace offering, a promise that whatever moment had been interrupted hadn't changed her desire to see him again. Alex nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. I'll be there. He watched as Claire walked up the path to her cottage, waiting until she was safely inside before turning to make his way back to the beach house. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, frustration at the interruption, confusion about what Claire had been about to say, and beneath it all, a growing certainty about his own feelings that both thrilled and terrified him. The bonfire was in full swing when Alex arrived. His friends greeted him enthusiastically, pressing a cold beer into his hand and pulling him into their circle. He tried to engage with their conversations, to be present in this last celebration with people he genuinely liked, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Claire. Earth to Alex, Jake said, nudging him. You've been somewhere else all week, man. What's going on with you? Alex took a swig of his beer, considering how much to share. I met someone, he finally admitted. Jake's eyebrows shot up. No way. Who? When? Why haven't you brought her around? It's complicated, Alex said, echoing Claire's words. She's not someone I expected to connect with. Mysterious, Jake commented. Well, is she here tonight? Point her out. Alex shook his head. She couldn't make it. Her loss, Jake said, clinking his bottle against Alex's. To vacation romances, may they burn bright and end without regret. Alex forced a smile, but the toast felt hollow. Whatever was happening between him and Claire, he was increasingly certain it wasn't something he wanted to end when they left Sandpiper Bay. The next morning, Alex woke before dawn, his head slightly fuzzy from the beers at the bonfire but his determination clear. This would be their last morning at Pelican Cove. Tomorrow, they would both be heading back to the city, back to their professional roles. Whatever he wanted to say to Claire, today was his last chance. The hike to the cove seemed shorter now that he knew the way. As he emerged onto the beach, the sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Claire was already there, sitting on their rock, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Morning, Alex said as he approached. Claire turned, a small smile touching her lips. Good morning. How was your bonfire? It was fine, Alex replied, sitting beside her. Would have been better if you'd been there. Claire didn't respond to that, instead gesturing toward the water. It's particularly beautiful this morning. Perfect for our last swim. They swam together in companionable silence, diving beneath waves and floating on their backs to watch the sky change colors as the sun rose. Alex tried to memorize every detail, the way the water felt against his skin, the sound of Claire's laughter when a particularly large wave caught them by surprise, the perfect piece of this hidden cove that had become their private sanctuary. After their swim, they sat side by side on the rock, letting the strengthening sun dry their skin. Alex knew he needed to speak now, to say what he'd been thinking all night, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. "I can hear you thinking," Claire said softly, not looking at him. "Whatever it is, just say it." Alex took a deep breath. "I don't want this to end," he said simply. "I don't want to go back to the city tomorrow and pretend that none of this happened, that we're just boss and employee who happened to run into each other on vacation." Claire was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want, Alex?" she finally asked, her voice barely audible above the sound of the waves. "I want to keep knowing you," he said. "The real you, not just the professional version. I want to find out if what I'm feeling, what I think we're both feeling, is real or just some vacation fantasy." "And if it is real?" Claire asked, finally turning to look at him. "Then what?" "I'm still your boss. The company has strict policies about relationships between supervisors and their direct reports." "Then I'll transfer to another department," Alex said without hesitation. "Or find another job if I have to. My career is important to me, Claire, but not as important as this. Whatever this is." Claire's expression softened. "You'd do that?" In a heartbeat, Alex confirmed. If it meant having a chance to see where this could go. Claire reached out then, her fingers lightly touching his. It was the first time she had deliberately initiated physical contact between them outside of their dancing at the festival. "I've been thinking about this all night," she admitted. "About what happens when we go back. About whether we're being foolish or reckless or brave," Alex suggested, turning his hand to capture hers. "Or brave," Claire agreed with a small smile. "I don't have all the answers, Alex. I just know that the thought of going back to being just your boss feels wrong, somehow. Like closing a door that was just beginning to open." Hope bloomed in Alex's chest. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want to try," Claire replied. "To find a way to make this work, to see if what we've found here can survive in the real world. It won't be easy. There will be complications, professional and personal. But I think it might be worth it." Alex felt a smile spreading across his face. "It will be worth it," he said with certainty. "We'll figure it out together." Claire's answering smile was like the sunrise, gradual, then brilliant. "Together," she agreed. They sat in silence for a while, hands still joined, watching as the day brightened around them. There were still questions to be answered, challenges to face, but in that moment, on their rock in their secret cove, the future seemed full of possibility. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," Alex said eventually. "That first morning we met on the beach, when you told me to call you Claire instead of Ms. Winters, something changed for me in that moment. It was like seeing you for the first time, really seeing you. Did you feel it too?" Claire's expression grew thoughtful. "I remember that moment," she said. "The way you looked at me when I said my name. It was different from how people usually look at me. Like you were seeing past all my carefully constructed barriers." "I was," Alex admitted. "Or at least, I was starting to." Claire squeezed his hand gently. "To answer your question, yes, I felt something too. Not as clearly as you perhaps, but a sense that something had shifted between us. That's why I kept coming back to this beach at the same time each morning, hoping we might run into each other again." "You did?" Alex asked, surprised and delighted by this revelation. Claire nodded, a hint of color touching her cheeks. "It wasn't entirely coincidental, our second meeting. I had a feeling you might be an early riser too." Alex laughed, feeling a surge of affection for this woman who continued to surprise him. "And here I thought it was fate bringing us together." "Maybe it was," Claire said softly. "Or maybe we made our own fate, one early morning swim at a time." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they reluctantly acknowledged that it was time to leave their sanctuary. They had packing to do, arrangements to make for their returns to the city. But as they hiked back along the trail together, there was a new lightness between them, a sense of anticipation rather than dread about what lay ahead. At the point where their paths would diverge, Claire to her cottage, Alex to his beach house, they stopped, suddenly awkward again. "So," Alex said, "I guess I'll see you at the office on Monday?" Claire nodded. "Monday," she confirmed. "We'll talk more then, figure out our next steps." "I'll look forward to it," Alex said, meaning it despite the complications they both knew awaited them. Claire hesitated, then stepped forward and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, "for making me brave." Before Alex could respond, she turned and walked away, her figure gradually disappearing down the path toward her cottage. He stood watching until she was out of sight, his hand touching the spot where her lips had been, a smile he couldn't suppress spreading across his face. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 3 months later, Alex stood in the doorway of his new office at Horizon Technologies' partner agency, watching as the team he now led brainstormed ideas for their latest campaign. His transfer had been approved with surprising ease. Claire had spoken to the CEO directly, explaining that Alex's talents would be better utilized in a creative leadership role at their sister agency. There had been knowing looks from some colleagues, whispered speculation about the real reason for his sudden promotion, but Alex didn't care. The new position was genuinely a good fit for his skills, and the slight distance it created between him and Claire professionally had allowed their personal relationship to flourish. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Claire. "Still on for dinner tonight? I have news." Alex smiled as he typed his reply, "Wouldn't miss it. Can't wait to hear your news." Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, over the past 3 months. They'd been discreet at work, maintaining professional boundaries during office hours. But outside of work, they'd gradually built something real and meaningful, weekend hikes that reminded them of their mornings at Pelican Cove, quiet dinners where they talked for hours, evenings spent with Claire sketching while Alex read beside her. That night, as they sat across from each other at their favorite restaurant, Claire seemed unusually nervous, fidgeting with her napkin and avoiding his gaze. "So," Alex said after they'd ordered, "what's this news you mentioned?" Claire took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position as creative director at Meridian Group." Alex's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Meridian was one of the top marketing firms in the country. "Claire, that's amazing. Congratulations." "Thank you," she said, a small smile playing at her lips. "It's an incredible opportunity. More creative freedom, bigger projects, better compensation. You absolutely deserve it," Alex said sincerely. "When do you start?" "That's the thing," Claire replied, finally meeting his eyes directly. "I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to talk to you first." Alex felt a flutter of concern. "Why? This sounds like your dream job." "It is," Claire confirmed. "But it's in Chicago." The implications hit Alex immediately. Chicago was halfway across the country. A long-distance relationship when they were just finding their footing together seemed daunting, perhaps impossible. "Oh," he said, trying to process this new information. "That's quite a change." Claire reached across the table to take his hand. "Which is why I wanted to discuss it with you before making any decisions. These past 3 months have been, well, they've been the happiest of my life, Alex. What we have is special, and I don't want to lose it." Alex squeezed her hand, his mind racing. "I don't want to lose it either," he said honestly. "But I also don't want you to pass up an opportunity like this. You've worked so hard for this kind of recognition." Claire's expression softened. "There's another option," she said hesitantly. "The position comes with the ability to build my own team. I could bring people with me, people whose talents I believe in, people who I think would thrive in a more creative environment." Alex's heart began to beat faster as he understood what she was suggesting. "Are you offering me a job, Ms. Winters?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. "I'm offering you a choice," Claire corrected. "A chance to come with me, to see if what started on that beach in Sandpiper Bay can grow into something even more beautiful in a new city, with new challenges. But only if that's what you want too. Alex didn't need to think about it. The prospect of building a life with Claire, of continuing both their professional and personal journeys together, filled him with a certainty he'd never felt before. "Chicago sounds perfect," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside him. "As long as we're together." Claire's smile was radiant, reminiscent of that morning in Pelican Cove when she'd agreed to give their relationship a chance. "Together," she echoed, the single word carrying all the promise of their future. Later that night, as they walked hand in hand along the river that ran through the city, Alex found himself thinking about that first morning on the beach, when a simple "Claire" had changed everything. How one word, a name, an invitation, a promise, could alter the course of a life. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Alex smiled, pulling her closer as they walked. "I was just thinking about how sometimes the most important moments in our lives can seem so small at the time. A chance meeting on a beach, a single word that opens a door we didn't even know was there." Claire nodded, understanding immediately. "And how brave we have to be to walk through that door, not knowing what's on the other side." "I'm glad we were brave," Alex said softly. "So am I," Claire replied, resting her head against his shoulder as they continued their walk, the city lights reflecting on the water beside them, their future stretching out before them like an unexplored coastline waiting to be discovered. And somewhere, in a small coastal town called Sandpiper Bay, waves continued to wash against the shore of a secret cove, where two people had found the courage to see beyond titles and expectations, to recognize in each other something worth risking everything for, a connection that began with a simple word, spoken on a sunlit beach at the edge of possibility. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and taking chances, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us how life's most beautiful moments often come when we least expect them. Sometimes, all it takes is one word to change everything.